Hey everyone, what is going on? Sigma has just announced 3 new lenses for Fujifilm X mount, the first time they're ever doing this. That's right, 3 lenses, the 56mm f1.4, the 30mm f1.4, and the 16mm f1.4 DCDN lenses. Yes, the same lenses that are available for Sony E-mount and the L-mount Alliance now are available for the Fujifilm X mount natively. How cool is that, right? Awesome times. Anyway, before we kick things off, big thanks to Sigma Singapore for allowing me to test drive these lenses. Having said that, these are my thoughts and my thoughts only. Now, I know 2 things you guys are most concerned about: how these lenses perform on a Fujifilm camera and what's the image quality like. So, without further ado, let's jump into Lightroom, let's pixel peep, and let's take a look at images from these 3 lenses, all taken on the Fujifilm X-T4. Alright guys, we're now in Lightroom taking a look at images here from the 16mm f1.4, 30mm f1.4, and 56mm f1.4 DCDN lenses. Let's start off with the 16 here. This is most of these images have been edited, but I will show you the non-edited as well. So this is what it looks like edited black and white. Want to kind of get more of an urban vibe to it here. And it's a decent lens. It's not super sharp. Let me show you what it looks like without the edit here though real quick. And as you can see, it's okay. You can make out the details here, but it's not going to be a bitingly sharp lens, at least for my sample images that I have here. Here's another shot of the Marina Bay area here in Singapore, which is quite nice. And this is where the 16mm will come into play more for these type of ambiance shots and stuff like that. That's where it's going to come into play at. So you can see here, let's look at the building. It's a little bit blurry here, softer in the corners. Was focusing in this area right here, and it's okay. Again, it's not going to wow anybody, but it's decent. Let me just look at the settings real quick. ISO 160, 16mm at f3.6. So I was even stopping down at 1/4 thousandths of a second because it was a bright day outside. So again, not going to be the best, but it's decent. All right, moving on. Let's go to another 16mm shot here, and this is at ISO 160 again, 16mm at f3.6, 1/3500ths of a second. And zooming in on this again, it's a little bit, it's not really that sharp, to be honest with you folks. Not going to wow me at all, any way, shape, or form. And let me just show you the before edit, just show you if there's any difference on that, and not really. It is a soft lens, at least the copy that I got here. Let's move over to the 30mm f1.4. And I like this lens, but again, compared to the 33, I'm going to give the edge to the 33 from Fujifilm. But this is a pretty decent lens. My friend Casey right here, and I took a portrait shot of him at ISO 160, 30mm at f1.4, 1/6400ths of a second, and it was bright daylight outside. And again, look at this, you know, it's not that sharp, folks. It's really not. I mean, I can sharpen this up and I can show you what it looks like when I add some topaz sharpening to it, but out of camera, not going to wow you. Here's another shot here at the 30mm f1.4. I did a black and white of Casey as well. Let me show you what it looked like before edit and after edit. Before edit and after edit. I would say the Fujifilm will definitely best this in the sharpness category. Let's move over to the 56mm f1.4, which I like this lens a lot. Great for architecture, great for portraiture. I just really enjoy this lens, and it's a sharp lens, as you can see right here. Zooming in on this, you can really see the details right here. This is at f3.2, ISO 160, 1/1700ths of a second, and I'm noticing a much better sharpness coming out of this lens versus the 30 and the 16. Let's go into this portrait shot here. My friend Michelle here, who was very kind enough to pose for me, and this is ISO 160, 56 at 1.4, 1/2500ths of a second. It was bright daylight when we were shooting this, and you can see all the detail in the skin, the eyes, the hair, absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Michelle, for allowing me to take your photo, and I will show you what my final version of this image is right here. All right, and let's take a look at this picture of this flower here. Also want to kind of do a little bit of pseudo macro photography, 56 at 1.4, ISO 160. And as we zoom in here, you can see the details right here. This is quite sharp. Very, very impressive. A couple other shots here with that. Look at the fire hydrant here at 56 1.4. So yeah, and look at the bokeh right here. If you just want to see this circular bokeh at 1.4, very minimal haloing. It just is a very good performing lens, folks. So those are my thoughts on these 3 lenses in terms of image quality. Let's talk about performance, and we'll go to my final thoughts right now. So as we saw in Lightroom, the image quality out of these lenses is not too bad. The star of the show, in my personal opinion, is the 56mm f1.4. It's sharp, got great bokeh, great fall off, great portraiture lens. It's around 75, 80 millimeters thereabouts, converting it to full frame equivalent. I don't have a calculator in front of me, but it's around that range. But it is essentially more of a portraiture lens than the 31.4, and of course the 16 is more for cityscapes, landscapes, and wide angle photography. But it's interesting. You know, I think that 56 could give the Fujifilm variant a run for their money. But what about the 31.4? As we saw from the sample images there, I'm going to say Fujifilm's 33mm f1.4 is an exceptional lens. In terms of optics, I got to give it to Fujifilm. But these price points are very different in terms of the Sigma versus Fujifilm. So the 30 is not a bad lens. It's not. It's a little bit softer. It's not as sharp as I was expecting it to be like the 56, but it does a decent job. And the 16mm is an okay lens. It's, as I said, it's a wide angle lens. It's around 20 millimeters there, about full frame equivalent. And it's a good wide angle lens, right? Cityscapes, landscapes, architecture, that kind of stuff. You want to get some really interesting shots with it, you can do that. But it's not the sharpest lens out of the three, at least from my personal experience. Having said all that, let's talk about what it's like to use on the X-T4. And one common denominator from all these lenses is that they don't focus as fast as native Fujifilm lenses as of yet on the X-T4. Now, these are pre-production lenses. I have to let you guys know that. Now, even though they say it's firmware 1.0, these could be updated by Sigma. They could be updated before you even see them into market. So as it stands right now, they're a little bit slower. It's not a deal breaker, but you do notice the difference. Eye tracking works well though, but when it does acquire focus, they're relatively sharp and they do nail the shot that you need to get. But don't look at these for fast action photography, at least from my experience with these lenses thus far. Okay? All right. Let's talk about the build quality of these lenses though. These DCDN lenses are a different feel from, let's say, the Contemporary or the I series lineup from Sigma or the Art series for that matter. And I feel personally, in terms of design aesthetics, I would love to see an I series design on a Fujifilm camera, because that I series design's got that kind of retro modern look to it, fantastic build quality, and would match the aesthetics of the X-T4, for example, perfectly. Whereas the DCDN lenses are okay. They're more of a nondescript lens, so they're more kind of a workhorse lens, but they don't really like scream to you like, wow, this is a beautiful lens. Not like the I series or Art series lenses from Sigma. But one thing that is missing from all three lenses, which Fujifilm users are used to having, is an aperture ring on your lens. Of course, with your A controls on that and the way that the camera is designed. You know, if you're, Fujifilm users watching this, you already know what I'm talking about. For those who don't know, you don't have that standard program, your aperture priority, shutter priority, and manual options there. They're in the camera, but it's set up a little bit differently. So without that aperture ring, it does throw it off a little bit. But again, these lenses were designed for Sony E mount, L mount, and now to the X mount. So in the future, if there is, I'm guessing, a big take up of these lenses, Sigma could invest a little bit more and probably give us a lens with an aperture ring to it and with those controls as well. That would be really cool to have that, but let's see what happens down the road. So let's talk about what's inside of these lenses. For the 16mm f1.4, we got 16 elements in 13 groups, 3 FLD elements, 1 SLD element, and 2 spherical elements. Got 9 rounded aperture blades like all the 3 lenses. Close focusing distance is 25 centimeters. Your filter diameter is 67 millimeters, and the weight is 405 grams. So this is the heaviest out of the 3 lenses. It's got more glass, all these kind of things, but it doesn't perform as good. But I'm curious on that regard. Let's talk about the 30mm f1.4. You got 9 elements in 7 groups. You have 2 spherical elements inside of this. You have 9 rounded aperture blades. The close focusing distance is 30 cm. Your filter diameter is 52 millimeters, and the weight is 275 grams. Now let's go to my favorite lens, the 56mm f1.4. You have 10 elements in 6 groups. You have 1 SLD element and 1 spherical element. You have 9 rounded aperture blades. Close focusing is 50 cm, filter diameter is 55 millimeters, and the weight comes in at 280 grams. So those are the specs of the lenses, and yeah, again, based on these specs, I was expecting the 16mm to be a little bit sharper, a little bit better performing, but there is no chromatic aberration or purple fringing that I saw, at least from my test thus far, so it is well controlled in that regard. But the 56 to me is the sharpest out of the 3 lenses. So my final thoughts on these 3 lenses, I mean, they're great options for you out there if you're on a budget. I'm going to say that. In terms of optics, I'm still going to hand it to Fujifilm lenses for being the better lenses thus far. But again, Sigma has not put in their best glass in these lenses. These are good lenses, but these aren't Art series or I series lenses for that matter, or sports lenses. So I would say that, at least this is my guess, no one's telling me this, that if these lenses do relatively well, we could see more investment from Sigma going forward and better glass coming from them as well. But for the price, they're a lens I would definitely consider if you're on a budget, or if you're just looking to get something out there and you're not a huge prime shooter, but you want to prime once in a while, definitely consider this versus a more expensive lens if you're only going to use it once in a while. Anyway, those are my thoughts on these 3 lenses. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Are you looking to pick these up? Are you going to hold off? Or are you waiting for that rumored 18 to 50 f2.8? That should be coming in the near future, since it's already for the Sony E mount and L mount. I tested that lens and it's a fantastic zoom lens that could be headed the X mount way, so we'll find out very soon. Anyway, guys, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. Like this video, helps me out a lot. Take care, stay safe, and I'll chat to you soon.